26-year-old Jean Spangler longed for fame and the bright lights of Hollywood. Instead, she worked as a bit actor, getting uncredited roles and appearances in television and film. But when she went missing in 1949, it seemed everyone knew her name. In her disappearance, she achieved a level of fame that eluded her in life. So much so that we have forgotten much about who she was. This is part 2 of her story.
Hi, I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Amy.
And you're listening to She Goes by Jane. At the end of this episode and every episode, we will be joined by a special guest who will read an original poem by Amy Baker about the women we're featuring. This week, we are joined by Sara Tomko.
Hi, Vanessa.
Hi, Amy.
Vanessa, we're back.
We're back with part
2.
2.
Yeah, so last week we covered the first part of Jean Spangler's story. Jean was an aspiring actress and dancer who went missing from Los Angeles on October 7th, 1949. Now, I encourage everyone to listen to that first episode because we really cover a lot about who Jean was, and I think that's just as an important part of her story as like what happens to her disappearance, right?
Right. She is not solely her disappearance.
So, Vanessa, what are you thinking about Jean and Jean's story so far?
Well, I think she sounds like a very strong woman.
Mm-hmm.
And like maybe she was like a little bit wild.
Yeah.
But also like a really good mom.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think she's, like, you can see in her, like, so much yearning for wanting to be known, right?
Right. And I think really what comes down to is, doesn't she just sound like women now?
Yeah.
But she's trying to do that in the 40s. And that's
40s.
Like the whole entire problem.
Exactly. With like a now ex-husband who didn't really seem to support.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think she wanted both family and career. And at that time it was like, no.
Pick the one, the family.
Yeah.
Right.
Pick the family.
Yeah. It wasn't even like pick the career. It was, pick family. Mm-hmm. Now, we're going to talk more in this episode about the search for her and kind of some theories that have circulated since. I will heavily caution we're not going to get into some of the like more, I don't know, not salacious. That's not the word that I want, but like there are a bunch of people today in our time who have come forward trying to solve Jean's disappearance and also some of the other crimes that I'm going to mention in this episode by connecting them to like their own family members. There's not enough space here to get into the intricacies of those, but there are other places that you can kind of search that out.
So it just gets like a bit rumory?
Well, yeah. So like it's not substantiated like in terms of, these are all just like theories at this point.
Okay.
Right?
So we're sticking to the more plausible paths?
Yeah. So we're going to talk about kind of like the main kind of categories of the theories, right? Rather than kind of where those have gone in a contemporary setting, which seems really vague, but
it's so vague.
Yeah. But basically there's like two different men who have spoken about their theories about crimes that were happening in LA in the 1940s and tying them to some of their relatives.
Okay.
And those have not been substantiated yet. I leave room for possibilities, but Jean is often mentioned in there.
Okay.
And so there are books, there are articles, there are podcasts like that cover those specific people, but they're talking more about their family members, and there's a different space for that. Okay. If that makes sense. Okay. So we're going to start with the initial hunt for Jean. So on the morning of Sunday, October 9th, Griffith Park employee Henry Anger, that is his name. Henry Anger, arrived at work and unlocked the Ferndale gates at around 6:15 a.m. So for our listeners who aren't familiar with it, Griffith Park is one of the largest municipal parks in the United States at about 4,000 acres. So Ferndale is one of the main entrances.
Okay. So our man with a very punk name is opening the gates.
Yes, he is opening the gates. And so As typical of his usual route, Henry Anger would close and open the gates along Ferndale, and he was doing so that Sunday morning when he spotted a woman's handbag about 10 feet off the road and near the second gate, which was about a mile from the first entrance. Henry, who worked as a gardener, was particularly attentive in his job, and he said when he locked the gates on Saturday night, this purse was not there. In investigating this, Henry looked through the bag. Inside, he was able to locate Jean's sister-in-law, Sophie's, phone number and gave her a call. Now, as you recall from our last episode, Sophie was already worried when Jean hadn't returned home after saying she was going to go work at a filming location on Friday night. So this is now Sunday. And so Sophie had waited until Saturday evening to report Jean missing. So at this point, Sophie and the police were aware that something could have happened to Jean. And now it's 2 nights that she has not been home.
So the police are being cooperative with Sophie?
Yes. So Sophie calls the police and they arrive on the scene and they start to investigate. There's some actually fascinating posed photos of them.
Yeah, you've shared those before, I think, on Facebook.
Yeah.
They were quite wonderfully posed, weren't they? Like pointing
Yes.
at the handbag.
There's pointing. There's like arrangement so that all of the men are like clearly photographed in it.
Visible faces, visible gestures.
Yes. It's like, to me, it seems like a very
Are you gonna
Hollywood
share that
production.
one?
I should, yeah.
You should. It's kind of funny almost, like
Yeah. Like here.
crime drama.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they were shown where the purse was found and given the bag. And so that's kind of, this photo ends up resulting for later. It's like definitely very posed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, so they now have in their possession Jean Spangler's black cloth purse. Now, its handles had actually been torn from its frame. And inside the purse, they found cosmetics, some hairpins, some ID cards, an address book, and like a few newspaper clippings. Missing from the purse was any money that Jean may have had on her and her lucky silver dollar that she always carried with her. The most important thing they found, though, was a note that has really baffled everyone since it was found in 1949. And this note was written in pencil, and it was unsigned, though it's believed to be in Jean's handwriting. Okay, so it reads, "Kirk, can't wait any longer. Going to see Dr. Scott. It will work out best this way while Mother is away."
What does that mean?
Yeah.
Do you have theories?
I do have some theories, and yeah, I really like, so to answer that question more completely, we actually have to dive a bit into theories that have developed since Jean went missing.
Okay.
And those theories begin almost immediately after she was reported missing. So I'll get to Scott and Kirk.
Yeah, because it's Kirk. We have a doctor that we're naming.
Dr. Scott and
Dr.
Kirk.
Scott.
Right. And Sophie, when she's asked about this, she says that she doesn't know anyone named Kirk or Scott and didn't know what the letter meant, to be clear. Because Sophie's our girl at the moment, right?
Right.
Okay. So Jean's case is covered extensively in the paper in those early days and weeks. Okay. So I promise I'll get to Scott and Kirk in a second.
Okay.
Now, 2 things happen somewhat simultaneously with her case. One, there's a physical search for Jean primarily in Griffith Park where her purse is found.
Mm-hmm.
And this uncovers basically nothing. But sometimes nothing means something.
Wait, but you said basically nothing, and now you're saying nothing means something. Amy,
Yeah.
what are you doing?
Okay, so basically what the police notice is there actually isn't a sign of a struggle in the park.
Okay.
Okay.
So like the purse could have been chucked there
Yeah.
after, like.
Right. So that's one of their theories.
Okay.
They think either A, it's been thrown there, maybe from not even in the park, that it's like thrown from a roadway or
Right.
something.
Okay.
Or it had been placed there on purpose to kind of misdirect them.
Okay.
But they start to think that maybe nothing happened to Jean within the park itself. Despite this, a few days later, they do host a massive search for Jean in the park, and the officer in charge emphasizes that they're not just looking for Jean's body, but for any evidence. They are aided in the search by a mounted patrol because the search area is quite massive. It's a 4,000-acre park.
Mm-hmm.
And, Vanessa, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the good doggos
Aww.
also involved in the search, which included Fritz the dachshund.
I bet Fritz was very handsome.
Excessively handsome.
And a very good boy.
Yes. Taffy the cocker spaniel.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Very cute.
And an unnamed Springer spaniel.
Oh, I wish we knew the name.
Yeah.
Because Taffy and Fritz are pretty awesome.
Right. And so they actually, during the search, they don't turn up anything except like someone's discarded prison uniform.
Whoa.
Yeah. So
I mean, it's most likely unrelated, right? But still very bizarre.
so bizarre. And like, this is like never mentioned again. I did not.
Isn't that like worth investigating?
Yeah, I did not pursue that research rabbit hole of trying to figure out if they ever figured out who the prison uniform came from.
Right.
But then also they found like a series of various pairs of underwear, not together, but all of them had been tied up in knots.
Each pair
Individually, like
had been individually tied in knots
yes,
and sprinkled throughout the park.
yes.
Men's? Women's?
I believe it was women's underwear.
Huh.
Yeah, but no Jean or clues for Jean. Just
We are finding some fantastically odd items that sound extremely concerning.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
We're moving on from there, right?
We are, yes.
Okay.
Okay. The other thing that happened is they start questioning just about everyone Jean knows. They have her address book and they start calling the numbers listed, as well as making contact with just everybody in her life. One of the men they end up talking to, Mike Howard, is clearly panicked by this conversation. He ends up saying, "Sure, I knew her. Everybody along the strip knew her, but I never went out with her. And what the hell is all this about anyway?" Everybody knew that girl.
Was that like a really like, I didn't just know her.
Everyone did.
Everyone knew her.
Yeah.
I never had an affair with that woman.
Wait, what is this about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay.
When they talk to Dexter, her ex-husband, he says, this is just like her. And she does this thing and she's done it before. Like, honestly, from him, it sounds kind of like sour grapes rather than anything helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Because then he does add that the only Scott he knows is the man she cheated on him with while Dexter was in the South Pacific during the war.
Wow. He had to go there. Also, this is Dr. Scott in relation to something with Kirk this time. I doubt it's the same
Right.
Scott. Also, wasn't he like threatening to like get rid of her at one point?
Yeah, well,
Dexter himself so that he could have the kid?
so not get rid of her. He just said he would fix it so she can't see her.
Okay.
Could mean any number of things.
Okay.
Not
Okay, because I'm like,
Dexter.
Dexter.
Right.
But it's not Dexter?
No, I mean, I am saying his name, so.
Right. You are saying his name, which is why I'm questioning you on this now.
Yeah. Right. Okay. They do also talk to her agency, the one who sent her out on calls for film and TV bits. And this is really important. They said they didn't send her out on a call that night.
Mm.
So the police call around to all the studios that they can find, major studios, minor studios, TV studios, and they also can't find record of her working with them either that night.
So was it like, did she wink but really not mean to? Because then she tried to cover it up later by being like, I have to stay out longer for work.
Yeah, it's anyone's guess at this point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All of this gives credence, though, to one of the theories that you'll hear when it comes to Jean, which is that, yes, she lied about working that night in order to go do something else. From investigators' research at the time, they discovered that there was a doctor known as Dr. Scott, who they said was an unlisted physician. They don't come out and say it in the papers at the time, but basically a doctor who provided abortion services and other medical services, particularly to women in the Sunset Strip area of LA.
So would he have been like kind of well known where people would just be like, Dr. Scott?
Well, so what Detective Lieutenant Harry Didion says he's working on this case. He says that Dr. Scott was known to Miss Spangler and her coterie of nightclubbing friends.
I have no words.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Okay. Now, in the papers, they say that Jean, and this is their quote, suffered from an affliction common to her sex, but that she wasn't, quote, she wasn't in trouble.
Okay.
Yeah. So obviously the trouble part is code for pregnancy.
Yeah.
But I have no idea what affliction common to her sex would mean in 1940s speak. I feel like it could cover anything from like yeast infections to like a sexually transmitted situation, right? Like, so like I'm kind of at
I really feel like it would be also like following that category of like, I mean, if you just have like a really bad period and people are like, she's psychotic.
Right. Like, what is the common affliction? So,
yeah.
Yeah. So if anyone is like an expert on sexuality or social history of that era and wants to chime in on like what they might be referring to with their
the common
affliction common to her sex.
I want to know. You want to know?
I am all ears.
Educate us, somebody, please.
Yes. So despite this, and despite people saying they knew of this doctor, they could not locate him at this time. And even though they never pursued this line much further, at least publicly, one of the prevailing theories about what happened to Jean on the night of October 7th is that she met with this Dr. Scott, as her note indicated, and had an illegal abortion, which resulted in her death. This abortion being the thing that she needed to take care of while her mother was away.
So if that happened, would Dr. Scott have just disappeared her?
You know, throughout history, in times when abortion services have been illegal, yeah, if a patient died during the process of an illegal abortion, like you would not want that.
Like the doctor would have to protect himself?
Yeah, so you would not want the body being there, right? Okay. Yeah. Nor would you necessarily want to leave them somewhere that they would be found in case it could be traced back to you in some way, right?
That's why it's so important to be legal.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that
one
is talked
reason.
About. Yeah. Now, speaking of Jean's mother, it's about this time that Jean's mother, Florence, arrives back from Kentucky. She's gotten word that her youngest daughter is missing and leaves before seeing the birth of her grandson in Lexington. And she's met by her oldest daughter, Betsy, at the station. Investigators and reporters start hammering Florence for information immediately. She, like Sophie, says that she doesn't know a Dr. Scott or Kirk and that something terrible must have happened to her little girl. Sophie again says that she doesn't know Scott or Kirk. But the thing is, Florence and Sophie do know a Kirk.
They do?
They do.
Okay. Who is he?
Okay, so Jean had played a role with Kirk Douglas in the film Young Man with a Horn.
You said that earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I put his little name earlier as a little sprinkle.
Sprinkle.
Yes.
Foreshadowing.
So the production dates were from June and September of 1949. I don't know if that lines up with the filming dates, but later when this major oversight about Kirk is pointed out to Florence, that she forgot Kirk freaking Douglas, she simply says that it's hard to keep track of all the people her daughter meets on set.
Wait, are we saying though that Jean was having like an affair with Kirk Douglas or a relationship?
Well, okay.
Do we know this? Did Kirk Douglas ever say? Am I getting ahead of you?
You are getting ahead. Slow
down. Okay, I'm going to slow down. Okay. We'll be a good listener.
Okay. So now Kirk Douglas at this point had been working in film for only 3 years, and he's not quite the film legend that we know him today. But 1949, the year Jean went missing, he had his first nomination for an Academy Award as Best Actor for the film Champion. So he wasn't an unknown at this time.
Okay, so he's like new.
Yeah, so he's new, but like getting awards, right? And so for them to be like, oh, Kirk Douglas, like, really? Yeah. And Douglas is actually questioned about Jean because he's basically the only Kirk they can find. Like, in case you're wondering, because I was, Kirk was an incredibly uncommon name at the time. We're talking roughly 20-ish kids per million that were named that in the teens through 30s, right? So not even Kirk Douglas's name is Kirk.
So it's so rare.
Yeah.
Okay.
So he was actually named Iser Danielovich, but took up the name Kirk when he joined the Navy during World War II.
So he didn't even take that up as an acting name.
Yeah, so he took it up right before joining the Navy and just kind of kept it.
So did he go with Kirk Douglas then, or was he Kirk Danielovich then Kirk Douglas?
So
Was there an evolution of Kirk?
There was an evolution. So he was, first his birth name, and then he tried out like a Izzy something in the middle, and then
oh my gosh,
Kirk Douglas. So Kirk came much later. And when they ask Kirk about Jean, they actually have to ask several times. And they do this over the phone because he's vacationing in Palm Springs. First, he denies knowing her, but then later says, I told Detective Chief Thad Brown that I didn't remember the girl or the name until a friend recalled it was she who worked as an extra in a scene with me in my picture, Young Man with a Horn.
What does that mean, Kirk?
Now, a bit later, he gets more elaborate and says, then I recalled that she was a tall girl in a green dress and that I talked and kidded with her a bit on the set, as I have done with many other people. But I never saw her before or after that and have never been out with her. He claims he didn't even know her name.
Do we believe him?
Well, others on the set told newspapers at the time that Kirk did know who Jean was and that the two were seen speaking frequently on set.
Oh my gosh, what are you telling us about Kirk Douglas right now?
Well, I don't know what I'm saying about Kirk
Is he
Douglas.
not an okay dude?
Well, I mean, for that, you would really have to dive into some of the rumors about Kirk Douglas that have come out.
Oh, I don't know anything about him.
Yeah.
Oh, is there some?
Mm-hmm.
Is he not?
I mean, I don't know.
Is he questionable?
They're unsubstantiated allegations.
Ooh, okay.
But
so there is some
But fair to look him up, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll be back in a moment.
Is he the Kirk from the letter?
Right.
Right. So Kirk Douglas staunchly denied this. And at the time, he was married to Diane Dill, his first wife, and they had two sons, Michael and Joel. Also at this time, he was maintaining publicly, at least, that he was faithful to his wife. Later in life, though, in his memoirs, he wrote about having an open marriage with his second wife and the series of sexual and romantic encounters he had during both of his marriages, primarily with many of Hollywood's leading actresses. And even with this, he doesn't mention an affair with Jean in those books.
I feel like he would have.
Well,
but maybe not because she disappeared.
Yeah, so it's from my understanding that the women mentioned are really just like Hollywood's noteworthy women.
Okay. Using that to his advantage with that. Okay.
Yeah. So to add fuel to the speculation that Kirk and Jean were having an affair, the actor she starred in her last film with, The Petty Girl, was Robert Cummings. And he said he and Jean became friends. He said that he had seen Jean in the week prior to her disappearance and that she seemed happy, so he asked her if she was in a new romance. And Jean said yes. And he asked if it was serious, and she replied, not exactly, but I'm having the time of my life. And many have taken this to be confirmation that Jean had some sort of relationship with Kirk. Again, we don't have confirmation of this. Even if this were true, there isn't a line connecting her disappearance to this potential relationship either.
Right. Those two things can be completely
that's taking
separate. Like
a bunch of leaps, right?
She could have had the affair with him, but it has nothing. The disappearance has nothing to do with him.
There are several leaps to get to that theory, right? And that's also just supposing that when she talked to Robert about being in a relationship, that it was Kirk Douglas. Like it could have been other people, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all of this leaves a void in explaining what happens to Jean. There were the typical reports of people seeing her in various locations, either shortly before or shortly after her disappearance, that came in as soon as her story hit the papers. And Vanessa, that's something that we've seen frequently, where people have thought they've seen the missing person. And like, first, like I was talking about this phenomenon with my husband, who has to hear all of the like random stuff before it makes it to the podcast, right? And so I'm telling him that like people mentioned like seeing her, and he's like, oh, like does she look like every other Hollywood actress at the time? And I was like, well, yeah, kind of. And then he was like, is she the blonde or the brunette? And I said the brunette. And then he was like, oh, and I showed him a photo and I was like, is this what you were picturing? And he was like, yep, that's.
So just actress.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Which is to say, like, Jean looks like a lot of beautiful Hollywood women, and particularly of that time, right?
But no, like, real, it's true. She doesn't have any, like, real defining features. And normally defining features can go one way or the other, right?
Yeah.
She's just very beautiful. And yeah.
Yeah. And, like, honestly, I could see other people being mistaken for her. So I'm not surprised at all that there were reports that people saw her. And I think it's taken as fact now that a person in a store saw her waiting for a man that evening. But like, I honestly don't see anything that substantiates that past the usual kind of reports. Like, if you go through the newspapers at the time, people saw her on Sunset Strip, or eating hot dogs with a man outside a store, or a teenager who was a family friend saw her on the street. And like, there's also talk that she was seen out at a club arguing with two men, or that she was seen in a blue-gray car with a man. Like,
she was all over the place.
Yes. So like, the list is really...
But also potentially in none of those places.
Exactly.
Yes.
Right. In other cases we've covered, like, this happens, right? Like, where someone's like, I saw them, right?
But people want to solve a mystery.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so sometimes, like, later on, those people, like, realize that they're wrong, or, like, they confirm that it's wrong. I don't know. Like, so could these sightings, any of them have been Jean? Like, maybe. Could they be something else? Also, maybe. Right? So I'm not sure why we've necessarily settled on, like, she was in the store waiting for a man as like, fact, when...
Right. Why does
so
that the one that
them.
gets selected, right?
Yeah. But the other thing that happens that is a bit particular to this case is something that has lingered across time and is still talked about today with her disappearance, which is tying her to other acts of violence that happened in Los Angeles around this time. Now, the first connection is made early in the news reporting about Jean, and it's the disappearance of a woman named Mimi Boomhauer that happened in August, a few months before Jean disappeared. Mimi was a 48-year-old woman from LA who was quite wealthy. She was a widow of, and this really sounds strange to say, a linoleum tycoon and a big game hunter.
Okay.
And shortly before Mimi's disappearance, she began acting erratically. And on the night she disappeared, she left her uneaten salad on the table, her car in the garage, her lights on, and like simply disappeared. And her case is notable in that the window of time that she could have disappeared basically is between when someone last spoke with her and her first miscommunication, and that time frame is really small. So we have, I believe, like less than an hour to account for like what happened to Mimi in that hour.
Wow, so like just a quick disappearance.
Yeah. And 1 week later, her purse was found in a phone booth with a note on it that read, "Police Department. We found this at the beach Thursday night."
Oh, so that does seem kind of like...
Yeah. Like, that's the night she disappeared.
Okay.
And so, like, while it's vastly different, the thing that caught people's attention is the purses.
Yeah.
So the newspapers start mentioning the two women together, hypothesizing that there's some sort of handbag fetishist.
Is that a real thing? Please tell me that's not a real thing. It's not a real thing. Did you Google it?
Okay, I am not going to Google that, but I am guessing, like all things, yes, there is a handbag fetish in the world. But like, for real though, if someone was a handbag fetishist, why would they be disposing of the
True. It's not. It can't be a thing. So
well,
they would be saving the handbags.
It would be saving the handbags. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. Not abandoning them in various locations, right?
Also, you can just go get one at a thrift shop. You don't have to kill a whole woman to get a handbag.
Now, the one thing I know about 1940s newspapers is they love to talk about what they called fetishists and sex fiends. So this really isn't surprising, but like the link between the two is kind of interesting. And Mimi isn't talked about as much anymore. And certainly like this connection between her and Jean isn't explored as much today. But it's like kind of like this whisper of a thread between them.
Okay.
Now, Vanessa, when we covered Lola Challi's case recently, I mentioned a second missing woman.
Yes.
That she was often compared to. And we asked listeners to message us if they wanted us to cover that other story, and they did.
And so we are?
Yeah, so Ruth Baumgardner. We're going to cover her case. So I'll do the same here. Like, Mimi is still missing. So if you think you want to dive more into her case and shine more light on her story, please let us know. You can message us on our socials or through our email at info@shegoesbyjanepodcast.com. Now, the next theory is that Jean's disappearance could somehow be tied to someone else. It's the murder of Elizabeth Short.
Okay.
Now, do you know Elizabeth's name?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now,
this is one I do know.
Okay. So a lot of people, this is going to ring bells because you may know her by her name, which she was given, which is the Black Dahlia.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like Jean, Elizabeth was described as an aspiring actress, but she didn't have any acting credits, which,
okay,
as we know from Jean's story, isn't unusual. And so some people say there's no proof that Elizabeth was an aspiring actress. So, but that's what is said about her. And also, like Jean, Elizabeth took work where she could. She, in fact, rented a room behind Florentine Gardens, which is the same place Jean had found work at as a dancer. Elizabeth, though, was working in LA as a waitress.
So they really were in the same areas.
Yes. Now, on January 15th, 1947, like that's over 2 years before Jean's disappearance, Elizabeth's body was found severed into 2 pieces and mutilated in the Leimert Park neighborhood. It would be really impossible to cover the entirety of Elizabeth's murder here or the subsequent investigations trying to identify her killer. And I know that's going to feel like really reductive to some who really want to follow those leads, but like it's a really complicated story to tell, and I can't like do it justice in this short of a space. I will say that in terms of conversations that were happening at the time, there's a lot of publicity connecting Elizabeth's murder and Jean's disappearance to other crimes against women happening at the time. These include the murder of Gladys Kern, a realtor, in 1948, the murder of Evelyn Winters in 1947, and the brutal murder of Jean French in 1947. In fact, the LAPD gets slammed in 1950 by a grand jury that calls them out for the inability to close these cases, these crimes against all of these women.
That's a lot.
And there's more. Like there's like this. Yeah. So I think they start calling is Jean, I think, the 10th victim of this potential serial killer. And really, yes, the grand jury is like, why are these cases accumulating? Like, why is this not being solved? And so in the years since Jean's disappearance, people have come forward to try to connect them or implicate individuals in those crimes. It's like what I was talking about in the beginning. And there are people who think they know who Elizabeth's killer is, and there are people who think they know Jean was murdered by that same person. And there's also someone else who says that their father was a killer, and also the mysterious Dr. Scott.
There's just too many possibilities.
Yeah. So, like, is it possible that Jean's case is connected to Elizabeth's or those other women? I think they're often called the women alone murders. Like, it's like women who just, like, went out on their own or out in public, unaccompanied.
Easy target.
Yeah, it's all bad, right?
Yeah.
But, like, I'm not jumping on those theory trains because I want to kind of, like, keep this close to Jean specifically. One thing I do want to talk about is sort of the aftermath of Jean's disappearance, because I think that's important to highlight, like, how well loved she was. Now, I don't know exactly what was going on between her mother, Florence, and her father, Cecil, but I do know that in the 1950s, her father left Sawtell and was at the Brentwood Psychiatric Hospital, which left her mother, Florence, in really to carry on Jean's story on her own. Now, Florence often switched sides on what she thought happened to her daughter. At times, believing something terrible had happened to her, and at times she hoped that she was alive. In December, 3 months after Jean's disappearance, she offered a $1,000 reward for information about her daughter. But the other thing that really colors Florence's life after Jean's disappearance is her relationship with her granddaughter, Christine. When Jean disappeared, Christine had been picked up for the weekend by Dexter, and he basically doesn't bring her back after their weekend is done. There's a quick...
Really?
Yeah, so
it wasn't like, I'll bring her back for when her mother is home.
Well, so she gets picked up on Saturday, so I'm presuming she would be with Dexter Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah.
And by Sunday, people know that Jean is missing, so he just doesn't...
He doesn't bother because Jean's gone.
Jean's gone.
He's just going to keep her.
He's just going to keep her, yeah.
Okay.
There is a quick hearing about this shortly after Jean disappeared, and basically saying Dexter can retain custody of Christine until it's determined what happened to Jean. And Florence does take issue with this, but she ultimately doesn't fight it, likely because she's trying to figure out what's going on with her daughter, right? In December, though, that changes, and Florence pushes for custody of Christine. She says that since her daughter's disappearance, she has only been allowed to see Christine one time. She also alleges that in this time that Dexter had been encouraging Christine to call her stepmother Mama. And furthermore, she alleges that Dexter and his wife Lynn are unfit. And to back this, she includes an affidavit from Lynn's ex-husband where he says that Lynn ignored their own children while having her own affair. So yes, they're trying to paint Dexter and Lynn as not great parents, right?
Right.
Now, in many ways, Florence is not successful in her pursuit. The judge ruled that because Christine had a known living parent in Dexter, that she should reside with him. And at the same time, he did recognize that Christine and Florence had a bond since she had lived with her grandmother for the past few years, and the judge asked Dexter to consider visitation.
I think that's fair.
Yeah, but Dexter is disinterested in this.
Okay.
He said he would be willing for her to visit for 1 hour a month.
Wow.
At his house, and when pressed about why, he said he was worried that Florence would kidnap Christine. And the judge is really I don't think so.
She would have done that by now if that was what she was going to do.
He's look, she's a 55-year-old woman who has lived in LA for years. Her family lives here. She's not about to run away with Christine. You've got to be kidding.
Yeah, she's not going to uproot her whole life for, yeah.
Yeah. So the judge said Florence could have Christine from Saturday at noon until Sunday at 6 p.m., 1 weekend a month at her house, and she would be able to spend the day with her from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. at Dexter's house on another Saturday of the month.
Such a long day to be around somebody
I know,
that you're not comfortable with.
Hate each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. This would not be the first time they went to court. It's challenged again. And in that case, it's ruled that essentially Florence is a stranger, which seems like harsh language because she's not a stranger. She's Christine's grandmother. But it's basically the courts are saying is that she wasn't a parent. And who has rights to custody when you're considering extended family members, including grandparents, is actually still in flux today. There was actually a local case in which essentially a grandmother wanted custody, but instead the child was adopted out to one of the local social service workers despite the grandmother's claim and her ability to provide for her own grandchild.
Yeah, I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So eventually what ends up happening is Dexter fled to Florida with his family, and that ends visitation between Christine and her maternal family. Now, because the relationship, and this is where you were going earlier, because the relationship between Dexter and Jean And later, Dexter and Jean's family were so tense, there's always suspicion that Dexter harmed Jean.
Right.
Yeah. And so, in fact, though she didn't say this in her statements initially, Sophie claimed that Jean told her on the night Jean disappeared that Jean planned to go see Dexter to get $50 in child support he owed to her.
It just seems like what might fit. Like, if it
Right.
wasn't the abortion story, I think this is like
Is
right
like
there
the-
with it. My top two, anyway.
Yeah. So, like, okay, so she was going to go demand money from him. But, like, that doesn't make sense to me because Dexter was picking up Christine the next morning and she could have collected that child support from him then. Like,
True.
so again, for his part, Dexter said that he hadn't seen Jean for months. Now, Jean's case will always be tied up in these complicated threads like serial killers and Hollywood fame and rumors. But what I know is that sometimes you can turn on a movie and catch a glimpse of her still among the other women in the chorus line trying to find their way to fame.
We are now going to listen to Amy's poem, A Body in Motion, read by Sara Tomko. Sara is a film and television actress based in LA and CEO of In the Pocket Productions. She is most notably known as series regular Asta 12 Trees in the hit show Resident Alien, which is produced by Amblin and NBCU. Her career began in experimental theater and musicals in Virginia and Ohio, later moving to Los Angeles to pursue film and TV. She is an actor, producer, poet, singer, and mental health advocate.
The Body in Motion. Jean Spangler, 27, missing since October 7, 1949, from Los Angeles, California. 1. In the dance numbers, it is all lighting and feathers. That's how they trick the eye. The girls have yet to hit puberty, their hips just bone, their hair baby soft. Under hot overheads, they hit their marks in the chorus line over and over. Kicks high, heads tilted, smiles, pasted cutouts. Their dreams are spangled things. In the books, they are just numbers, height and weight duly recorded. But on stage, with their feet clipping against the boards, they are spiritual beings, the vibration of matter in air. 2. In the back room clouded with face powder, the woman with snow-white looks has stopped telling her age, or that she birthed a daughter, holds another inside of her. She keeps moving, embodies change. Walking the streets, she mirrors those in front of her, constructs a shadow dance of limbs and torso twists. The choreography is always new. But on her way to remove part of herself, she falls into her own steps. In her greatest act, she performs the dance of grieving. She becomes a Maenad.
For more information about our show or to check out other shows on the network, please visit evergreenpodcast.com. Bye, Vanessa.
Bye, Amy.